welcome to day 50 of reading every single day for the rest of my life for 30 minutes. I am at the top of page 82 of the Fellowship of the King. I'm so excited. It's day 50, so let's get it rocking. I got 30 minutes on the clock. Starting in 3, 2, 1, and so that's our timer. Here we go. That's our noise. Here we go. When he returned, Sam and Pippin got a good fire going. "Water!" shouted Pippin. "Where's the water?" "I don't keep water in my pockets," said Frodo. "We thought you had gone to find some," said Pippin, getting busy out the food and cups. "You had better go now." "You can come too," said Frodo, and bring all the water bottles." There was a stream at the foot of the hill. They filled their water bottles and the small camping kettle at this little fall where the water fell a few feet from an outcrop of gray stone. It was icy cold, and they spluttered and puffed as they bathed their faces and hands. When their breakfast was over and their packs all trussed up again, it was after 10 o'clock, and the day was beginning to turn fine and hot. They went down the slope and across the stream where it dived under the road, and up the next slope, and up and down another shoulder of the hills, and by that time their cloaks, blankets, water, and food, and other gear already seemed a heavy burden. The day's march promised to be warm and tiring work. After some miles, however, the road ceased to roll up and down it. It climbed to the top of a steep bank in a weary, zigzagging sort of way, and then prepared to go down for the last time. I'm sorry, guys, I'm super tired. In front of them, they saw the lower lands dotted with small clumps of tree that melted away in the distance to a view woodland haze. They were looking across the woody end towards the Brandywine River. The road wound away before them like a piece of string. "The road goes on forever," said Pippin, "but I can't without a rest. It is high time for lunch." He sat down on the bank at the side of the road and looked away east to the haze, beyond which lay the stood by him. Beyond which lay the stood by him. His round eyes were wide open after he was looking across lands he had never seen to a new horizon. "Do elves live in these woods?" he asked. "Not that I have heard of," said Pippin. Frodo was silent. He too was gazing eastward along the road as if he had never seen it before. Suddenly he spoke aloud, but as if to himself. Damn, guys, that was the third yawn. I'm a trooper, come on. The road goes ever on and on down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow, if I can, pursuing it with the wary feet, until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say." "That sounds like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming," said Pippin. "Or is it one of your imitations? It does not sound altogether encouraging." "I don't know," said Frodo. "It came to me then, as if I was making it up, but I have heard it long ago. Certainly it reminds me very much of Bilbo in the last years, before he went away. He used often to say there was only one road, that it was like a great river. Its springs were at every doorstep, and every path was its tributary. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out of your door," he used to say. "You step into the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there is no knowing where you might be swept off to. Do you realize that this is the very path that goes through Mirkwood, and that if you let it, it might take you to the Lonely Mountain or even further and to worse places?" He used to say that on the path outside the front door at Bag End, especially after he had been out for a long walk. Well, the road won't sweep me any more for an hour at least, said Pimpin, unslinging his pack. The others followed his example, putting their packs. Damn, come on. Putting their packs. Putting their packs against the bank and their legs out into the road. After a rest, they had a good lunch and then more rest. The sun was beginning to get low, and the light of the afternoon was on the land as they went down the hill. So far, they had not. I'm going to read it like this. So far, they had not met a soul on the road. This way was not much used, being hardly fit for carts, and there was a little traffic for the woody end. They had been jogging along again for an hour or more when Sam stopped a moment as if listening. They were now on level ground, and the road, after much winding, lay straight ahead through grassland sprinkled with tall trees, outliers of the approaching woods. I can hear a pony or a horse coming along the road behind, said Sam. They looked back, but the turn of the road prevented them from seeing far. I wonder if Gandalf coming after us, said Frodo. But even as he said it, he had a feeling that it was not so, and a sudden desire to hide from the view of the rider came over him. It may not matter much, as he said apologetically, but I would rather not be seen on the road by anyone. I am sick of my doings being noticed and discussed. And if it is Gandalf, he added as an afterthought, we can give him a little surprise to pay him out for being so late. Let's get out of sight. The other two ran quickly to the left down a little hollow not far from the road, where they lay flat. Frodo hesitated for a second. Curiosity or some other feeling was struggling with his desire to hide. The sound of hoofs drew nearer. Just in time, he threw himself down in a patch of long grass behind a tree that overtly shadowed the road. Then he lifted his head and proceeded cautiously above one of the great roots. Round the corner came a black horse. No hobbit pony, but a full-sized horse, and it sat a large man, who seemed to couch on the saddle, wrapped in a black cloak and hood, so that only his boots in the high stirrups showed below. His face was shadowed and invisible. When it reached the tree and was level with Frodo, the horse stopped. The riding figure sat quite still and its head bowed, as if listening. From inside the hood came a noise as if someone sniffing to catch an elusive scent. The head turned from side to side on the road. A sudden unreasoning fear of discovery laid hold of Frodo, and he thought of his ring. He hardly dared to breathe, and yet the desire to get it out of his pocket became so strong that he began slowly to move his hand. He felt that he had only to slip it on, and then he would be safe. The advice of Gandalf seemed absurd. Bilbo had used the ring, and I am still in the Shire, he thought, and his hands touched the chain on which it hung. At that moment the rider sat up and shook the reins. The horse stepped forward, walking slowly at first and then breaking into a quick trot. Frodo crawled to the edge to the road and watched the rider until he dwindled into the distance. He could not be quite sure, but it seemed to him that suddenly, before it passed out of the sight, the horse turned aside and went into the trees on the right. Well, I call that very queer and indeed disturbing, said Frodo to himself, and he walked towards his companions. Pippin and Sam had remained flat in the grass and had seen nothing, so Frodo described the rider in a strange behavior. I can't say why, but I felt certain he was looking or smelling for me. And also I felt certain that I did not want him to discover me. But I never felt or I had never seen or felt anything like it in the Shire before. But what has one of the big people got to do with us, said Pippin, and what is it doing in this part of the world? There are some men about, said Frodo. Down in the South Farthing they had trouble with big people, I believe. But but have never heard of anything like this rider. I wonder what he comes from. Begging your pardon, put in Sam suddenly. I know where he comes from. It's from Hobbiton, and this here Black Rider comes from. I know where he comes from. It's Hobbiton comes from, unless there's more than one, and I know where he's going to. What do you mean? Said Frodo sharply, looking at him in astonishment. Why didn't you speak it up before? I have only just remembered it, sir. It was like this. When I got back to our hole yesterday evening with the key and my dad, he says to me, "Hello, Sam," he says. "I thought you were away with Frodo this morning. There's been a strange customer asking for Mr. Baggins of Bag End, and he's only just gone. I sent him to the Buckleberry. Not that I liked the sound of him. He seemed mighty put out. When I told him Mr. Baggins had left his old home for good, hissed at me, he did. It gave me quite a shudder. What sort of a fellow was he? Says I to the Goffer. I don't know, says he, but he wasn't a hobbit. He was tall and black-like, and he stooped over me. I reckon it was one of the big folk from the foreign parts. He spoke funny. I couldn't stay to hear more, sir, since you were waiting, and I didn't give much heed to it to myself. The Goffer is getting old and more than a bit blind, and it must have been near dark when this fellow come up the hill and found that taking the air at the end of the row. I hope he hasn't done no harm, sir, nor me." Shoot. Let me plug in the MacBook, guys. Boom. Plugged in. The Goffer can't be blamed anyway, said Frodo. As a matter of fact, I heard him talking to a stranger who seemed to be inquiring for me, and I nearly went and asked him who it was. I wish I had, or you had told me about it before. I might have been more careful on the road. Still, there may be no connection between this rider and the Goffer stranger, said Pimpin. We left Hobbiton secretly enough, and I don't see how he could have followed us. What about the smelling, sir? Said Sam, and the Goffer that he was a black chap. I wish I waited for Gandalf, Frodo muttered, but perhaps it would have only made matters worse. Then you know or guess something about this rider, said Pimpin, who had caught the muttered words. I don't know, and I'd rather not guess, said Frodo. All right, Cousin Frodo, you can keep your secret for the present if you want to be mysterious. In the meanwhile, what are we to do? I should like to bite and a sup, but somehow I think we had better move on from here. Yeah. Your talk of sniffing riders with invisible noses has unsettled me. Yes, I think we all move on now, said Frodo, but not on the road, in case that rider comes back, or another follows him. We ought to do a good step more today. Buckland is still miles away. The shadows of the trees were long and thin on the grass as they started off again. They now kept a stone throw to the left on the road, and kept out of sight of it as much as they could. But this hindered them, for the grass was thick and tussocky in the ground uneven, and the trees began to draw together into thickets. The sun had gone down red behind the hills at their backs, and the evening was coming up before they came back to the roads. They came back to the road at the end of the long level over which it had run straight for miles. At that point it bent left and went down the lower lands of the Yale, making for Stock. But a lane branched right, winding through a wood of ancient oak trees on its way to Woodhall. That is the way for us, said Frodo. Not far from the road meeting, they came up on the huge hulk of a tree. It was still alive and had leaves on the small branches, and it had put out round the broken stumps of its fallen limbs. But it was hollow, and it could be entered in a great crack on the side away from the road. The hobbits crept inside, and sat there upon a floor of the old leaves and decayed wood. They rested and had a light meal, and talking quietly and listening from time to time. Twilight was about them as they crept back to the lane. The west wind was sighing into the branches. Leaves were whispering. Soon Soon the road began to fall gently and steadily into the dusk. A star came out above the trees in the darkening east before them. They were abreast, and in step to keep up their spirits. After a time, as the stars grew thicker and brighter, the feeling of disquiet left them, and they were no longer listened for the sound of hoofs. They began to hum softly, as hobbits have a way of doing as they walk alone, especially when they are drawing near at home at night. With most hobbits, it is a super song or a bed song, but these hobbits hummed a walk song, though not, of course, without any mention or supper, any bed. Bilbo Baggins had made the words to a true tone that wasn't old as hills, and taught it to Frodo as they walked in the lanes of the water valley and talked about adventure. Upon the hearth of the fires red, beneath the roof there is a bed, but not weary are our feet. Still round the corner we may meet a sudden tree or standing stone that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower and leaf and grass, let them pass, let them pass. I'm gonna turn this light on, guys, because it is getting dark. There we go. That's better. Shoot. It's so bright, yeah. It's so bright. That's better. Let them pass, hill and water under sky. Pass them by, pass them by. Still round the corner they may wait, a new road or secret gate. And though we pass them by today, tomorrow we may come this way, and take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or the sun. Apple, thorn, and nut, slow, let them go, let them go. Sand and stone and pool and well, fare you well, fare you well. Home is behind, the world ahead, and there is many paths to tread, through shadows to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Then world behind and home ahead, we'll wander back to home and bed. Mist and twilight, cloud and shade, away shall fade, away shall fade. Fire and lamp and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed. The song ended, and now to bed, and now to bed, sang Pippin in a high voice. Hush, said Frodo, I think I hear hoofs again. They stopped suddenly and stood as silent as tree shadows listening. There was a sound of hoofs in the lane, same way behind, but coming slow and clear down the road, down the wind. Quickly and quietly they slipped off the path and ran into the deeper shade under the oak trees. Don't let us go too far, said Frodo. I don't want to be seen, but I want to see if it's another Black Rider. Very well, said Pippin, but don't forget the sniffing. The hoofs drew nearer. They had no time to find any hiding place better than the general darkness under the trees. Sam and Pippin crouched behind a large tree bole, while Frodo crept back a few yards down the lane. It showed gray and pale, a line of fading light through the wood. Above it the stars were thick in the dim sky, and there was no moon. Damn, no moon. It's dark. The sound of hooves stopped. As Frodo watched, he saw something dark pass across the lighter space between the two trees, and then halt. It looked like the black shade of a horse led by a smaller black shadow. The black shadow stood close to the point where they had left the path and swayed from side to side. Frodo thought he heard the sound of snuffling. The shadow bent to the ground, and then began to crawl towards him. Once more the desire to slip on the ring came over Frodo, but this time it was stronger than before. So strong that, almost before he realized what he was doing, his hand was groping in his pocket. But at that moment there came a sound like mingled song and laughter. Clear voices rose and fell in the starlit air. The black shadow straightened up and retreated. It climbed up on the shadowy horses and seemed to vanish across the lane into the darkness on the other side. Frodo breathed again. "Elves!" exclaimed Sam in a hoarse whisper. "Elves, sir!" He would have burst out of the trees and dashed towards the voices, if they had not pulled him back. "Yes, it is elves," said Frodo. "One can meet them sometime in the woody end. They don't live in the Shire, but they wander into the spring and autumn, out of their own lands, away beyond the Tower Hills. I am thankful what they do. I am thankful that they do. You do not see that, but that Black Rider stopped just here, and that it was actually crawling towards us when the song began. As soon as he heard the voices, he slipped away. What about the elves?" said Sam, too excited to trouble about the rider. Damn, it's windy outside. "Listen, they are coming this way," said Frodo. "We only have to wait." The singing drew nearer. One clear voice rose now above the others. It was singing in the fair elven tongue, of which Frodo knew nothing. Of which Frodo knew others. It was singing in the fair elven tongue, of which Frodo knew only a little, and the others know nothing. Yet the sound blending with the melody seemed to shape itself in the thought into words which they only partly understood. This was the song as Frodo heard it. Snow White, O lady clear, O queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here amid the world of waven trees. Gothiel o'er Elbereth, clear of eyes and bright thy breath, Snow White, we sing thee in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that the sunless year with shining hand by her were sown, in windy fields now bright and clear we see your silver blossom blown. O Elbereth, Gothaniel, we still remember who will dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on the western seas. The song ended. "These are elves. They spoke the name of Elbereth," said Frodo in amazement. "Few of that fairest folk are ever seen in the Shire. Not many now remain in Middle-earth, east of the great sea. This is indeed a strange chance." The hobbit sat in shadow by the wayside. Before long the elves came down the lane towards the valley. They passed slowly, and the hobbits could see the starlight glimmering in the air, in their hair and their eyes. They bore no lights, yet as they walked, a shimmer, like the light of the moon above the rim of the hills before it rises, seemed to fall about their feet. They were now silent, and as the last elf passed, he turned and looked towards the hobbits and laughed. "Hail, Frodo!" he cried. "You are abroad late, or are you perhaps lost?" Then he called aloud to the others, and all the company stopped and gathered around. "This is indeed wonderful," they said. "3 hobbits in a wood at night. We have not seen such a thing since Bilbo went away. What is the meaning of it?" "The meaning of it, fair people," said Frodo. "It is simply that we seem to be going the same way as you are. I like walking under the stars, but I would welcome your company." "But we have no need of other company, and hobbits are so dull," they laughed. "And how do you know that we go the same way as you? For you do not know whither we are going." "And how do you know my name?" asked Frodo in return. "We know many things," they said. "We have seen you often before with Bilbo, though you may not seen us." "Who are you, and who is your lord?" asked Frodo. "I am Gildor," answered their leader, the elf who had first hailed him. "Gildor Ilgurin of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and most of our kindred have long ago departed, and we are 2 now, only tarrying here a while ere we return over the great sea. But some of our kinfolk dwell still in peace in Riverdale. Come now, Frodo, tell us what you're doing, for we see that there is some shadow of fear upon you." "Oh, wise people," interrupted Pippin eagerly, "tell us about the Black Riders." "Black Riders," they said in low voices. "Why do you ask about the Black Riders?" "Because 2 Black Riders have overtaken us today, or one has done so twice," said Pippin. "Only a little while ago he slipped away as you drew near." The elves did not answer at once, but spoke together softly in their own tongue. At length Gildor turned to the hobbits. "We will not speak of this here," he said. "We think you had best come now with us. It is not our custom, but for this time we will take you on our road, and you shall lodge with us tonight if you will." "Oh, fair folk, this is good fortune beyond my hope," said Pippin. Sam was speechless. "I thank you indeed, Ilgorian," said Frodo, bowing. Ellen Celia Lemuja and Fruja, a star shines on the hour of our meeting, he added in the high elven speech. Be careful, friends, cried Gildor, laughing. Speak no secrets. Here is a scholar of the ancient tongue. Bilbo was a good master. Hail, elf friend, he said, bowing to Frodo. Come now with your friends and join our company. You had best walk in the middle so that you may not stray. You may be wary before we halt. Why? Where are we going? Asked Frodo. For tonight we go to the woods on the hills above Woodhall. It in some miles. It is some miles, but you shall have rest at the end of it, and it will shorten your journey tomorrow. They now marched on again in silence and passed like shadows and faint lights for elves, even more than hobbits, could walk when they vanished without sound or footfall. Pippin soon began to feel sleepy and staggered once or twice, but each time a tall elf at his side put out his arm and saved him from a fall. Sam walked along at Frodo's side as if in a dream, with expression on his face half a year and half of astonished joy. The woods on either side became denser. The trees were now younger and thicker, and as the lane went lower, running down into the fold of the hills, there were many deep breaks of hazel on the rising slopes of either land. At last the elves turned aside from the path that Greenride lay almost unseen through the thickets of the right, and they followed it as it wound away back up the wooden slopes on the top of a shoulder on the hills that stood out into the lower lands of the river valley. Suddenly they came out of the shadow of the trees, and before them lay a wide space of grass, gray under the night, on three sides, and wood pressed upon it. But eastward the ground fell steeply, and the tops of the dark trees growing at the bottom of the slope were below their feet. Beyond, the low lands lay dim and flat under the stars. Nearer at hand a few lights twinkled at the village of Woodhall. The elves sat at the grass and spoke together in soft voices. They seemed to take no further notice of the hobbits. Frodo and his companions wrapped themselves in coats and blankets, and drowsiness stole over them. The night grew on, and the lights of the valley went out. Pippin fell asleep, pillowed on a green hillock. Away high in the east swung Rimarith, the netted stars, and slowly above the mists red Borgle rose, glowing like a jewel of fire. Then, by some shifts of airs, all the mist was drawn away like a vial, and there leaped up, as he climbed over the rim of the world, the swordsman of the sky, Melegaver with a shining belt. The elves all burst into song. Suddenly under the trees a fire sprang up with a red light. Come, the elves called to the hobbits. Come, now is the time for speech and merriment. Pippin sat up and rubbed his eyes. He shivered. There is a fire in the hall, and food for hungry guests, said an elf standing before him. At the south end of the greenswards there was an opening. There was a green floor, ran on into the wood, and formed a wide space like a hall, roofed by the buffs of trees. Their great trunks ran like pillars down each side. In the middle there was wood fire blazing, and and upon the tree pillars torches with light of gold and silver were burning steadily. The elves sat around the fire upon the grass or upon the sawn rings of old trunks. Some went to find Fro bearing cups and pouring drink. Others brought food on heaped plates and dishes. This is poor fare, they said to the hobbits, for we are lodging in the greenwood far from our halls. If you are our guest at home, we will treat you better. It seems to me good enough for your birthday party. That Frodo, Pippin afterwards recalled little of either food or drink, for his mind was filled with the light upon the elf faces and the sound of voices, so various and so beautiful that he felt in a waking dream. But he remembered that there was bread surpassing the savor of the richer than the tended fruits of gardens. He drained a cup that was filled with a fragrant draught, cool as clear fountain, golden as a summer afternoon. Sam could never describe in words nor picture clearly to himself what he felt or thought that night, though it remained in his memory as one of the chief events in his life. The nearest he ever got was to say, "Well, sir, I could grow apples like that. I could call myself a gardener, but it was singing that went into my heart, if you know what I mean." Frodo sat eating, drinking, and talking with delight, but his mind was chiefly on the words spoken. He knew little of the elf speech and listened eagerly. Now and again he spoke to those that served him and thanked him in their own language. They smiled at him and said, laughing, "Here's a jewel among hobbits." After a while Pippin fell fast asleep and was lifted up and borne away to a bower under the trees. There he was laid upon a soft bed and slept the rest of the night away. Sam refused to leave his master. When Pippin had gone, he came and sat curled up to Frodo's feet, where he last. He nodded and closed his eyes. Frodo remained long awake, talking with Gildor. They spoke of many things, old and new, and Frodo questioned Gildor much about happenings in the wide world outside the Shire. The tidings were mostly set.
You run this motherfucker. They can't stop you on a fucking Tuesday. How they gonna stop you? How the fuck are they gonna stop you? Get up off the fucking couch, look at yourself in the mirror, and just spit at the mirror. Fuck
You cocksucker.
I'm going out there to get what's belonging to me. Fuck
That was day
You run this
50 of reading for 30 minutes every single day for the rest of my life. See you guys. Oh, we're at the middle of page 92. That was day 50. See you in day 51.